I'm going to read today from my book Beyond the Breakwater. Today's chapter is chapter 27, Swan Song. There was a hum of conversation in Murray's when we went in on that particular morning, a buzz of excitement. Marvi Kurtori Taga, visitors had arrived. These visitors had attracted musicians from the area to gather in the pub. Expectations of the great entertainment that was to come was in the air. Raconteurs were vying with each other to take centre stage. Tin whistles, bowrons and fiddles were ready to burst forth, and laughter rose in bubbles with local fishermen and farmers mixing with the visiting revellers. It was my father's habit to go to the pub for a drink on a Sunday morning before dinner. I was with him on this occasion. He chatted to some friends at the counter, so I left him and sat staring out the window at the overcast day. The sea was a rumpled sheet of pale jade moving silently across the bay. As it happens, I found myself sitting next to the great musician and piper, Seamus Ennis. He had a slow, graceful manner. I was also aware of his towering reputation as a collector of folklore. I knew that he was a lover of Sean Nós and that he was a gifted performer himself. He was greatly admired in our Gaeltacht area, but I was a teenager at the time, so I stayed quiet on the edge of the company. He was gracious when he sat down beside me to say hello. He was in a black suit and he wore spectacles. He had a high forehead and hollow cheeks. His unbelievably long, pale fingers rested on the stops of the uilleann pipes, which were strapped to his shoulder and arm. I was struck by the kindness and attractiveness in his face. He spoke with a low, gravelly voice. His eyes were full of wonder and barely concealed merriment. He was compelling, and he spoke in clear, tuneful Irish. As a collector of Bélidas or folklore, he had cycled and driven to cottages all over the country from the 1940s onwards. He was an old hand at putting people of all ages at their ease. Had I ever heard of the story of the dying swan, he asked me. The swan is known to sing only once in its life, he said. She sings when she is about to die, he explained. He watched my reaction. It seemed as if no one else in the pub was listening when he spoke to me. The tragedy and beauty of the fable gripped me instantly. The swan sings, Quivakee, Quivako, he said. Have you heard it? I shook my head. He sang it softly then. Quivakee, Quivako, Quivakee, Quivako, Quivako, Quivako. That's the sound a swan makes at the end, he explained. His voice, a deep bass tremolo, was musical, low and evocative. He sang those notes of requiem slowly, and like a whisper they went into my ear and stirred my imagination. It was a lament by a swan whose nest has been plundered. In my mind's eye, I could see the aging swan somewhere on a darkening lake, gliding through lonely reeds and then coming to the bank to climb ashore cumbersomely, her head stooped low as she prepared to die. Ennis and myself sat side by side on a bench in Murray's, the sea behind us, the mountains in the distance, reaching up through the clouds. The view, timeless and serene, in keeping with the swan's last notes, and with the fierce intensity of feeling that all teenagers experience. I was both fascinated and horrified by this beautifully sad image of death. Then, giving resonance and depth, to his voice, Seamus Ennis played the dying notes of the air on the pipes, and their low, breathy drone added to the terrible grief of the dying swan as she laid her head down to leave the world in all its beauty. I came across a recording of Seamus Ennis recently on YouTube where he is playing a reel that was composed by his father, James Ennis, around 1913. It's called The Morning Thrush. Seamus says a thrush that sang on a tree outside the window inspired his father, and that he himself then heard a thrush at home, and he could hear some of the phrases his father had composed in the birds singing. I continue to search but have so far failed to find a recording of him playing or singing Cuiva-key, Cuiva-co. The diaries Seamus Ennis kept when he worked for the Irish Folklore Commission between 1942 and 1946 are published by Clóir Chonachta in a book called Misha an Fear Ceol. The author, Rianach I Ógáin, includes plenty of insights and stories. Tá scélíní ann faoine chlisteacht, faoine ceol agus faoine rachúlacht. There are stories there about his intelligence, about his music, and about his attractiveness, she writes. Although I've never heard Cuiva-key, Cuiva-co since, the few moments I spent with him that day have stayed in my memory, clear as a bell, like a perfect note. And just as a note, I did find it. I came across a recording on a website called Tubar an Dúlchais, and he recorded a woman in the Outer Hebrides in Barra, a woman called Annie Johnston, singing it in 1950. RoseAnn, sit in. I just want to wish you all a happy Easter, and it was RoseAnn's idea to do this, and we were going to finish up today but as the restrictions continue, we're going to resume again. We're going to take 3 days off, and we're going to continue on Thursday at 5 o'clock every day again. But we just wanted to wish all of you
a happy
Christmas.
Easter.
A happy Easter.
A happy Easter, and thank you all for your support, and we hope you're enjoying it.
Yes, okay. And it's a hard time, but we were hoping anyway that these readings would bring some bit of... We're carrying on as well because so many people have been in touch with us and telling us that they're enjoying it. So we'll talk again on Thursday at 5 o'clock. Godishin, Banach Dina Koska, Orav Galer. Happy Easter to you all.